All right, I'm here today with Nick Alva of the Story Orchestra, and I'm going to talk to him a little bit about the concept behind the Story Orchestra, and also ask him to talk a little bit about reclaiming September 11th from the destructiveness associated with this day. How about we start with that, Nick?
Okay, well, September 11th, 911, emergency. The moment that had happened, it didn't feel right. It felt wrong, not only because of its destructiveness, but also because of the way that it was perpetrated. I'm a big believer that we need to investigate more, and that there's a lot of information showing that it's all a large fraud. But from that, it ended up being a war, now going on 10 years, and also a destructiveness of the American culture, fear, these notions of austerity for ruin. It just makes no sense to me. So actually from that very day I realized that we had to do something to, because it became such a catchword, September 11th, 9/11, and no day deserves that type of infamy. So the important thing is for us as human beings is to realize that it's us and we're alive, and that's why we're kind of launching the idea 10 years later in a garden, because it's all about life, it's all about growth, it's all about possibility. And just to take it back, because we don't have to be afraid. There's no need to be afraid.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, are, sit around and try to figure out what to do when something, needs healings in a society. And this, to me, I mean, why I really was attracted to this Story Orchestra idea is that it really, gives us a sense of healing, but it also allows us to move beyond and also help us sort of do so together in a way that's positive.
Yeah, and also the thing with the Story Orchestra is just to go back to ancient traditions. We all know about archetypes, finding those archetypes, and there's a KPFA, one of my favorite jazz programs, is called Transitions on Traditions. So it's a notion of taking the tradition and having it transition into who we are now without losing what we had in the past. We have an inclination to forget all the good things that happen and all the bad things that happen when something brand new is introduced. So that's part of the notion of the Story Orchestra, is to pull out that which is ancient, maybe not necessarily ancient stories, but the archetypes. There'll be some ancient stories, of course, too, but also to look around today and see what's being done today that relates to it. And again, very notion of positive and life affirming. And tonight's the Story Orchestra also weaves around in themes and contexts, and part of what's happening tonight is we've chosen the theme of life in the garden, beauty, life. It's the premiere of the Story Orchestra, so today is its birthday, so happy birthday September 11th.
Yeah, happy birthday too. I love that theme also, because I think it's a universal one that we've always had, and sometimes it ends up being scarred by all of these tragedies and all of these things that happen throughout life, but we can go back to the basics, so to speak, and kind of remember that, we have this unifying theme between so many cultures. It doesn't matter what language you speak, or what horrible things have happened in your life. You can still get back to not becoming cynical and becoming more united with the earth and taking care of it in the process and ourselves.
And we all know that. We all know that intrinsically. We all know that we're humans. We all know that without the earth we're nothing. And it's just with the age of, we live in a very complicated age with technocracy and mass media and the lies. It's easy for us, for some reason, I don't know why, for us to be confused and distracted and pulled away from our source. But again, back to the theme of the garden, is if you focus and you plant a seed and you nurture it and you see all those things that are around you that are not, you don't have to pull the weeds necessarily, because that dandelion might be feeding the seed that you planted. You may not want to kill those bugs. Bring more earthworms in. But as you go through this process, everything becomes connected again. The basic, going back to the basic heart element, or the themes that we need to dig up again, are I think can really be realized and actualized by the process of gardening, because there's your focus. There's your nurturing the seed of this life and then into a plant, and then you can harvest its fruits. Yeah. Back to the Garden of Eden, right?
Yeah,
Why not?
and so tell me how the Story Orchestra works, and how did you come to actually start organizing it?
The Story Orchestra, well, I've had a lot of experience with performance bands, wrote music for theater, I'm a playwright, done fairly well. Haven't done all that well cash-wise. Anybody out there, I'm looking for support. But artistically wise, always did really well. Um, but I really had this idea of how can I connect with people? How can I bring people what's beneficial and beautiful? And then, and also at the same time, have it be something that could actually be an income generator, quite honestly. And then when I was kept asking the universe or putting those out and wondering to myself, and at one point, with the right hand came the notion of the Story Orchestra, and at the left hand came this notion that there would be some financing for it. And I'll get into the Story Orchestra in a minute, but the premiere is actually being funded by Sonoma County Arts Council. So for its premiere having a grant, I took that as a positive sign that this is a good direction to go in. And the notion of the Story Orchestra is again, going back, combining, well, initially this is its premiere, it's still a baby. So its initial, we're doing music and spoken word. So the first group that will, and it's taken on a little bit of a variety show. So the orchestra, instead of necessarily being vertical, in this case will be horizontal, and the performance will stretch out. And the first portion of the show will be Coastal Winds, which is a wind trio from Occidental, performing French classical pieces by Darius Milhaud and Ibert. And we'll have Larry Temple reading Jean Giorno's The Man Who Planted Trees. So this theme of French, the classical music. And the Story Orchestra was to blend all elements, all styles of music: world music, classical music, high art music, folk music, hip hop, rock, pop, all those type of things. Then the second half, the second hour, will be featuring a group called The Round, which is an acoustic vocal group, and then also Mr. Underhill, which is a little bit of progressive with some hip hop elements. And they'll also have P. Joseph Potocki, who's, I think, one of the finest satirists around, and he'll be doing just a spoken word thing. So it'll be story reading with classical interludes of music, then song, and then a spoken word piece, and then we'll end again with song. So stories and song. And the idea behind the Story Orchestra, again, is being able to adapt. If somebody's looking for a theme, I mean, it has to fall in certain parameters. I won't do anything about murder or vampires or anything along those lines. But we'll discuss it with them, and we'll come up with the material appropriate for those venues and for those performances. And we'll probably actually keep the garden thing going for a while. In March, planning on doing some more shows, and we'll do some springtime events outside, March or April, depending on how the weather looks. And we'll elaborate the theme of the garden, of being in nature.
It's nice that they work.
Well, it's a healing. I'm sorry.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Healing, and the notion of healing our society, particularly away from fear, but also an antidote from the messages that are brought. If people could, that was part of what's going on with so much media and computers and such. People don't necessarily need inspired to come out, or a lot of people are. But how do we pull people back out? Yeah. It's not necessarily creating new works of art, but presenting them in such a way that they'll want to come and be involved. So, an antidote for. You were saying?
Well, I was just going to say, I like that that you are working along themes, and that in so doing, it gives people something to sort of, a seed around which to kind of work. I think that a lot of times with art, there's, at least from one of the questions that I've been asking lately is, what is art to people? What, and is it a theme that they're looking for, like a universal theme, like misery, and something that encompasses that in either a visual or performance piece or something like this, which is much more this is integrated art to me. It seems like it integrates the possibility of the unknown. It's not like a orchestra in the sense that every note was written out on a sheet of music, and if it doesn't follow that, it's just there's an error. It's more open to interpretation. There's more instantaneous art happening.
Yeah, I think it was Mingus who said in jazz there's no wrong note so long as the following note is perfect. That's always been a motto. But it's also integrated to that. Like again, when the Story Orchestra will be available for events and such. And whoever's sponsoring those events, it becomes a creative collaboration with them too. So what are you looking for? What do you want to have here? And it doesn't necessarily. It can be anything. It's like somebody has this idea within their mind, and then we'll attempt. Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We'll attempt to meet what they're looking for, and also collaborate with them. They may have suggestions. They may want to pull in things.
I think it's an unexpected kind of theatrical...
Well, that's the goal of the orchestra, is actually to get more theatrical. The next thing that we'll introduce will be dance and movement, and then depending on the venue or where the performance will be, we'll incorporate visuals of different types. We may, we'll probably end up using some technology as well, depending on what's appropriate and where we'll be performing at. Whether
it adds to it or kind of
distracts.
Right,
exactly.
Because sometimes I've found like Felonious was part of this ArtsSonoma, and they do beatboxing, and so they use a lot of mics and a lot of technology to get their sound, get what's going on, and a lot of their fans like that. So I think that I always think that as long as technology, or a lot of people at least do when they think of art, if it lends itself to what the emotion that's being evoked, then it's part of it. If not, then it feels a little bit like a distraction.
Yeah. So. Well, tonight we're not going to use any. We're going to stay away from any type of electrical and power or any tools. But we realized that it was getting darker earlier than we thought, so we'll have bike lights and flashlights and try to get a campfire if it gets too dark.
Oh,
campfire
nice,
attitude
nice.
going. So that's an appropriate use technology. But I think the important point is to figure out ways of bringing people out into particular places. And this one's a garden. Maybe the next one might be in an art gallery, celebrating or a release for somebody's a local artist's contemporary paintings. And or it might be a house event, or it might be some type of any type of gathering,
or a beach or something,
or a beach, exactly.
Something that's
in the mountains,
feels,
caves. But again, the important thing is to bring the people out and have that be an interaction. Today we asked people to bring their own chairs if they wanted to, but it was noted that there's plenty of ground to sit on.
Absolutely.
Snuggle the buns in the earth.
Well, how exciting. Well, I wish you a great event tonight. I'm sure that we're going to hear some stories from it, and thanks for coordinating something like this. It's unique and unexpected, and I'm just really happy that we're doing it here in Sonoma.
Oh, thanks for your time, too. Also, if you're interested, you just look up Alva Sound Art Studio, and that will connect us.
Great. Thank you so much.
795-3545.
Great, Nick. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Arts.